There we go. So a function is a way to save code and use it later. So let's say in your game you always wanted. So guys, are you guys playing your game?
No, I'm making a new file.
Making a new file? Please don't be playing your game. No more playing the game until I say play your game, test your game, or whatever.
Yeah. Is it okay? I'm changing the music. Should I not do that?
Not do that right now. So a function. So let's say in your game you have multiple ways to decrease health. So let's say if your bad guy hits you, if your bad guy hits your bunny, if you run over lava, right? If you have like 6 different ways to take away health, do you really want to code the code that takes away health 6 different times? Not really. I mean, the more things you have to type, the more errors you'll run into. Does that make sense? The more keystrokes, the more letters, the more the odds are you're going to have more errors. So if you have a 10-line code versus a 1,000-line code, you're more likely going to have errors in the 1,000-line code. So what a function does is it allows you to write code, essentially save it to a variable, and then you use that variable later. Does that make sense? There are 2 types of functions. One's called void, one's called value returning, and we're not going to get too into that because we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on, we're not going to delve deep into functions. We're just going to be able to use them. But a void function essentially just displays information. A value returning function does, what do you think it does? It returns a value. So a value return function will give you information that you can use later. A void function just displays information. So the way we create functions, there's 2 keywords you guys need to know. You need to know define and call. Defining a function creates it, just like we define a variable. And we're going to define a function. And calling a variable is running the code or using it. So the first thing we're going to do, now I want you guys to follow along. We're going to do define. Yes, Cole. Oh, thank you. And I need to share the screen with Will.
Can I use the extension cord?
Yeah, sure. Okay, we're good. And Will, are you good? Can you see my screen? Okay. So, first thing, we use the word def. For DEF, that stands for define. Now, notice def changes colors. That means it's a built-in function in Python, meaning we can't ever name something DEF. If you type define, it changes color. What does that mean? Now we can use it. Yep. So define, we could make that be, you know, hello or whatever. But we don't want to do that. We want DEF. Now the next thing we type is the function name. You want your function to, just like we do with variables. What do we want variables to, what's the correlation between variables and the value? Yes. Yes. What were you saying, Lauren?
The name summarizes what the value is.
Exactly. The name of our variable should be knowable. We should know what the value is. So if I type in name and I have 324, that doesn't really make sense, right? Because if I'm now doing for num in range name, it's like, well, name is supposed to be a number, but it's named name. So that's not good coding convention, right? You'll get confused and you'll try to find errors because you don't want to do that. So we want our function name to be what it is. So in your guys' homework, you could do like problem 1. You could do fun 1. If we're doing something later, you could do like lose underscore health. So you just want the variable name to represent what it's doing. So you could do lose health, tax return, anything like that. For now, we're just going to go with fun 1 for function 1. But in your homework, again, you guys need it to be more or less what it is, the function name. So you guys are fine with doing define function 1, define function 2, or problem 1, problem 2. you can do that. This is also going to explain why so many things have parentheses. Why we have to have, you know, pygame.image.load set of parentheses. That's because that load is a function, and these parentheses hold parameters that we give to the function. So we're going to get to that in a minute. So define function 1, you need 2 parentheses followed by a colon. Now when you hit enter, it's indented. So when we print hello, this print is inside of the function. Just like if we have an if statement, if x is 1, we haven't, you guys don't need to write down this if statement. This indent means it's inside of the if statement. Same with while loops and for loops. Every time we have while true, we hit enter, we have that indent. That indentation means every line that's indented underneath this is a part of whatever this is. Python doesn't use brackets like a lot of other languages. They use indents. So indents can get really, this is why I say don't change your font, because it changes the width of the space, the tabs. And in our video game, when we have 200 lines, indents mean everything. I'm sure you guys ran into an error where you didn't indent something right and something either broke or your images got double displayed or something like that. Indents are huge. So I'm going to delete all that. So this right here, print hello, is function 1. That's all function 1 does. Now what we're going to do, or if we type print, this is not in the function. So the difference between these two lines, even though they're next to each other, is one is inside of the function, and this one is not. So when we run it, what do you think we'll see? Will we see both hello and this is in the function? Or will we just see this is not in the function? Correct. We will only see this. Because like I said earlier, there's 2 words we need to know. We need to know define and call. Thank you. Call actually runs the function code. So if you guys are doing homework and I'm saying you're not calling the function, what that means is you aren't actually running the code. You've created the function, but you're not using it at all. So how do we call a function? Well, we do the function name, fun1, followed by 2 parentheses. So now when we run this, function intro, and I'm going to save this in the 3rd hour so you guys can have it. Oops. Functions intro. So when you guys run this, oops, I didn't want you guys to see that. What do you guys see? So for those of you who all of you should have written this down. What do you see when you run this code? Asher?
I think you would say this is not in the function hello, right?
Is that what you got, Cole? Yeah. You see this is not in the function followed by hello. Now, Python runs through your code. You can think of it running through it in 2 ways. The first way checks for grammar. So if I don't have that, is that an error? And oops. And when I run it, I immediately get an error. Okay? Saying, do you guys know what that line, this is a quick review. Do you guys know what this error means? Lorian?
End of line.
What does that mean?
You didn't finish the print.
Yes. So what it's saying is we've gotten to the end of a line and you haven't completed it. You don't have a period at the end of the sentence. You don't have an exclamation point. You don't have a question mark. That's because this string isn't finished. So it's assuming everything from here over is part of the string. But is this part of the string? No, print is not supposed to be part of the string, so you get it. That's why you get that error. So to fix it, you put that. If we forget something, it immediately tells us. It doesn't even run it. You guys notice nothing's popping up over here? Normally, every time we run a code, we run it, we see this restart, and then it shows us the file it's running and blah, and then we get the code. But if we have a grammatical error, or technically a syntax error, it never gets over here. So it runs through the code once, looking for all of your syntax errors, and you're missing a comma, you're missing a colon, blah blah, all this sort of stuff. And then what it does is once it's like there's no grammatical mistakes that break the code, we start running the code, and then that's where we get that's when we get like the 1 2 3 dot is you guys is num. Oh, did I do that wrong? I hope not. Oh, okay, here we go. So this is a good example. So right now, when I run this code, I do not have any grammatical errors. So it loads it and starts running it. But as soon as we get into the actual code, that's when we get these exceptions. And this is saying str object has no attribute is num. What that is saying, I'm checking to see if these strings are numbers and not letters. But I'm not going to, that's something that is, we're not going to get into that. So those are the two different types of errors and how Python runs through your code. Do you guys have any questions on that? No? So the reason I say all of that is because your code does, not only does it look for grammatical errors, it also loads stuff into memory. So when we run this code, and now I get to draw on my screen, which you guys know I love doing. So this is, I used yellow for the first R. So, oh, hang on, let me get rid of this is num thing. And let me do, okay, here we go. Sorry, I just had to get it to look a little neater than it did. So what our code does is as it's running through looking for errors, what it's also doing is that it sees that this defined function 1 is a function. So what it does is it goes, okay, this is a function. We're going to put this into memory. And we're going to store fun1 as a function. We know where it is in the code. We're going to store that information over there. It cycles through, goes through that line, goes through that line, goes through that line. We have 0 grammatical or syntax errors. So then what it does is it starts at the beginning and it starts evaluating code like you're used to line by line. So now that it's checked for errors, I'm going to change colors to red. So it goes to this line. What does this line do?
The starter.
Oh, yeah?
Kevin just sent me a message and he said you didn't let him in to the zone.
Who sent you a message?
Kevin.
Oh, I didn't hear the noise. I will let him in. Oopsies.
Okay.
There you are. Hi, Kevin. Sorry about that. Let me change attendance. And I will talk to you later about what you missed and everything, okay? Okay. Okay, so we're just going over functions. So for this first line, what it does is it's already loaded function 1 into memory. So is there anything that it needs to do in that line? No. What it basically does is because there's no grammatical errors, it skips over that line. It skips over this print hello and doesn't even look at it. It then prints this line. This is not in the function, which is why we have it here. We have it first, and then it goes to this line. Well, it now knows that fun1 is a function and it's loaded into memory, and that it needs to jump back to a previous line to run through it. So now I'm going to change this to blue. So then it runs back up here, goes to fun1, and then it starts going into here and starts printing hello, which is then why we see hello down here. Does that make sense? And the one caveat with functions defining and creating them is you can't call a function before it's created. So
Kind of like just like a variable, right?
it's exactly like a variable. I can't minus 10 from x if I haven't defined what x is. So if I were to take this and put this up here, fun1, and we run it, fun1 is not defined. So we get this name error just like with an undefined variable. Everyone tracking with me? Okay. Now, do you guys have any questions? Yes, no, maybe so. So one thing you can do, if I were to say, Asher, I want you to take a previous assignment and make that assignment a function, how quickly do you think you could do that?
I mean, I don't know, because like I would just define the function, slap everything in it, and then put it at the end. And if that works, then not too long.
That's exactly it. What a function does, you can, any code you've already previously written, you can make a function very easily. So let me open up.
I tried to do this with the player movement, and it worked. So I don't know if it would work.
Let me go.
I have a quick question while you're setting things up.
Yes.
So I was gonna use gravity for my player thing.
Yep.
Would gravity be a function?
No. What you would want to do with gravity is you'd basically have, you know how we have our badgers always moving to the right? You would just have your character always moving down, except when he gets to a certain area, then he doesn't. So if his location is greater than a thing, the ground, have him move down once it's there, or once it's smaller. Once it is there, it stops moving. Here we go. So what this is for, so take this code. This is someone's homework code. It's unknown. No one knows whose it is. I don't even know. So what you would do is you would do problem 1. I would take all of this, control indent, problem 1. So that is how simple it is to take code you've already written and make it into a function. Functions don't have to be complex. They're code you don't want to have to rewrite.
Should we do that for our homework?
No. From now on, you guys should do your homework using functions, because again, if you are overwhelmed by functions, write your code like you normally do, and then go back and do what I just did. I wouldn't recommend doing that. You guys should probably get used to starting things as a function and then writing them as a function. However, to start, you guys are okay doing that. What questions do you all have yet? Yes, Lorian.
You put like loops in functions, and then when you call a function, it'll just keep looping.
Yes. So, and you can also do the other way. You can put a function inside of a loop. So, how do we make code run a certain number of times? What do we use? For loop. Yep. So for x in range, how many times do you want this to run, Asher?
15.
And then all I do is I call the function inside that loop,
And then it'll run 15 times.
and it will run 15 times. That right there is going to be on tests and quizzes. I will say, make sure, or have this function run the number of times a user wants. That is how you do it, with a for loop, and you throw the function right in there. So if it's, does that make sense? Okay. And then what you were saying, Lorian, is if we have defined function 2, let's do names is blank, and then you guys don't have to copy this down. This is just for me to, while user equal y, name is input, do you want to, oh no. Please add a name plus equal name, and then user is input, do you want to go again? Print. Okay, so this real quick is a really quick function that you guys don't have to copy down. Right? This is just for, you can put a loop inside of a function. Anything you can do normally in code, you can throw it in a function, at least for this class. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so when we run this, oh wait, where's my function? Oh, what? How do I call it?
Excuse us for interrupting you because it's popcorn day at the academy.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue real quick. Do you guys have any questions? Asher, I just said put the popcorn away. Put the
Please
food
popcorn
away.
away.
So, Luke said what was wrong with this. What's wrong?
You call it
How do I call it?
fun parentheses.
All right, so let me uncomment this out, and I'll just get rid of that. Oops.
But we don't have to write the program down, do we?
Correct, you do not. So this is just showing, what else do you notice about this code?
When you print the names down, they don't have any spaces.
Yeah.
I think they'll all come together.
That's an easy fix.
That student didn't know what they were doing.
Nope. Look at the names of the functions.
They're very similar.
They're the same.
Ooh.
So you can rewrite and overwrite a previous function if you're not careful. So again, this is why you always want your function name to represent what it's doing, because you're way less likely to have fun one overwrite. Because if I did this, I'd be like, well, why is this like?
So is the function basically just a cooler variable? That
Yes
does-
and no, but
that
you
does
can.
different stuff.
Yeah, kind of. It's a, you can, well, that's the difference between a void function and a value returning function. A value returning function is you can actually have x equals fun1, and have it,
Oh, and like X.
and what this would do is, whatever this does, it would figure something out or create a variable, and then that variable would become x. So an example of this is,
I've done that before in a different language, but I never knew what was going on.
so if you import random, num is random.randint 0 to 100. This looks very familiar, right? We just have random dot, but if we import random, is it from random import star? I think so. From random import star, then we can get rid of random altogether, I think. Yeah. So what does this look like to you?
A void. Or value returning.
A value returning. Let's take a look at random real quick, and then
Quick question, will we need to know void and value return for, like, examples of those for the test?
I think it'll be a quiz, and you will need to know. You'll need to know like the general difference between the two. So one displays information, and that's void, and the other one will actually give you a value in return. So if you look here in random. So this is the random file that every time we import random, this is the information we import. So yeah, this is a lot of information. But look, to get state, no, get state, range. What is this? It's a function. Define range. These are parameters. We haven't learned how to do that yet. But basically, you can give random information and it can run with it. So when we give it a 0 to 22 or 0 to 100, it puts 0 as the start and stop and 100 as the stop. So these are default values. So if you don't give it information, it will run. But if you do give it information, what you give it overwrites the default value, which is why step is 1. But if we put 3 numbers in there, do you guys remember what range does if you put 3 numbers in?
Yeah, doesn't it say what you skip by?
Yeah, that's what you skip by. Normally you skip by 1, but if we type in 3, it'll skip by 3. Brandon.
What is self?
Self just means it's part of the class, and so if you have a class of random, that means variables in this function can use variables in this function without having to pass them. So the difference is I can pass information from one function to another, but I would have to do that. So essentially, you can think of it, instead of me giving something, I'd have to give something directly to you, and then if I want Luke to be able to use it, I also have to have something set up to give it directly to him, and to Asher, and to Cole, and to Anna, and to Lorian. That's 6 different things I have to do. Whereas if I have self, I put everything in the middle, and all of you can get it as whenever you need it. As opposed to me actually having to hand it to you, you just grab it in the middle as you need it. So that's kind of the difference between self and what we'll learn how to do. So this is a function. So this is the function that gives you a random letter between 0 and 22. So all of this is,
Oh my goodness.
yep,
Wait, a letter between.
a number, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I can't spell. And then lastly, look at this. This says return. So this is how you get a number. If it has a return value, if it has the word return in the function, it's a value returning function. See how that works?
Oh,
If it has return in it, it's a value returning function. So that's how we can have a variable equal an entire function, because the entire point of that function is to create and return a number.
I finally understand that. I never knew that, and I was always so confused with what I did.
Yeah. And whereas a void function just displays information. We cannot use names like this. We cannot put, we can't do names list equals fun1. Because there's no value to return. It's just, hey, here are the names. Make sense? So it's kind of it's the difference between I don't know. Oh, it's like you ordering a coffee and saying, and I go, hey, you have a function. This coffee's for Asher.
I like it.
But then I don't do anything with it. That's kind of a void function. Whereas if I go, this coffee's for Asher. Here you go, buddy. And I actually physically hand something off, physically, because it's all logical. Metaphorically. Hand something off to Asher, that is a value returning function. So in other programming languages, you'll have a class or a function, and you define it as void. Whereas in Python, it's kind of, it does it automatically. It'll return if you put return in there. All right, so break time.